What is going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Thanks for checking our latest Trade to Black presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Fresh off a week in Las Vegas. Our voices are back. Hope you got some good intake from what we had on Friday. We were on fumes there, so I appreciate everybody for being a little patient with us, but we thought we'd get some content out. We got a good show here today. Michael Bronstein's coming on in just a moment to talk about this hemp ban. There's some interesting stuff from the CRS as well. We're going to be looking at this DOJ memo with gun bans and marijuana users. First medical dispensary opens up in Kentucky, and finally some news on Trulieve. So lots to get caught up on as we were away last week. There's a lot of interesting news as we will quick recap the stuff that happened in Texas last week pertaining to teacup as well. So markets itself relatively flat as we head into December here, and whether or not we get some news, in the near term, long term, who knows? But we'll talk about that as well. So let's get into it here on a Monday. AV, good to see you. How's the throat? How's the voice today?
It was good. Markets actually aren't flat. MSOS was down 7% today, and MSOX was down 13.5%.
Is it down that much? I looked at it
there was
earlier.
A little bit of a correction today. I'm sure all the hemp guys out there that see the metric of success as stock prices were happy, but it was giving up a little bit of the gains that it got last week.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. I felt like shit Friday. To be completely frank. It was a rough travel day, and then I was sick to top it off, and I was sick all weekend. But no, it's way better today.
Yeah. I was seeing, I think, triples on Friday morning, but I don't know how we did it, but we did it. $4 to $3.30 again, basically. This is what Mitch said. Man, I missed the last little bit here. But anyway, we're curious to see how this is going to perform in the industry heading into the holiday season. But it's getting to be about that time, December 8th, and tax law selling season starts to kick in. And
we're one day closer to the 1-1. So,
all right. Good to know. Good to know. The Shad special. This good old Shad special. I love this. All in all, before we bring Michael in, I'll ask this question again because now that you're a little bit refreshed, but yeah, like you said on Friday, we saw a lot less exhibitors at the show. Show is relatively flat, but a lot of the conversations and people that we met with, like all in all, it's good to see a lot of people are watching the podcast, and it is growing, and a lot of positive sentiment. And I appreciate everybody that logs on here every single day and comments and logs on and gives us the metric numbers that we want to grow. And I appreciate everybody for doing that. But we learned a lot, both positive and negative, about the industry right now. But one thing that's clear, and I think everybody knows this, thanks Captain Obvious, is that we need news from Washington, and that was pretty much the sentiment all last week. So,
yeah, I mean, the conference itself was, I mean, I don't want to kind of like be a Debbie Downer, but I didn't recognize any of the people there. I mean, I've seen the same people there for the last like 10 years. A lot of just, I don't know if it was new faces, but just unfamiliar faces. I mean, it was great to see the guys from Verrell. It was great to see the guys from Chicago Atlantic. Saw Trent, Anthony Caniglio. So, I mean, we got to see a lot of the guys. The attach event was great, but the actual conference, and then which we were at for maybe like an hour tops.
Yeah.
And then just the normal get-togethers at like the bars that were like just general meeting places. I mean, it was kind of lacking. It felt like the air was sucked out of the room. It just didn't feel very lively. It didn't feel like MJ Biz. Granted, all the conversations that we had with the people that we knew were constructive. Then I'm not sure if Kim was there. I don't think I've ever actually seen the Trulieve people at. I don't think I've ever seen the Trulieve people at MJ Biz.
No.
But no, it was good. It was good. It had its bright spots, but again, like when we sat down with Burke, I mean, the consensus was like, I don't know any of these people that were sitting at the Chandelier Bar. And usually it's kind of like everyone that you know is there.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes.
Yeah. So if anybody that never has gone to MJ Biz, the Cosmopolitan has a Chandelier Bar. For some of you that have been out there know what it is. And that is the hot spot for everybody in the industry. But to Anthony's point, not a lot of people there. We did get a chance to meet up with Burke from Tyson 2.0 on Thursday before we flew out. It was good to get his insight. But he has the same sentiment. They're trying to push whatever they can with the administration, but status quo as it stands right now. So we're trying to dig and try to find as much information as possible. But it is what it is. But I will say, and I'm not giving this Shad Dales guarantee, but everything still points in the direction there's something that's going to happen. We just don't know the timeline. And don't reply to that, Anthony, because I know you're going to give a little smirk. But I will say, Yeah, what was good, and there were some big players there, was the Attach event, which was held last Wednesday night at the Las Vegas Country Club. Biggest names in the space were there for that night. And who puts that all together? It's Michael Bronstein and the people over at Attach. So with that, let's welcome in the president here in our weekly Insider's Edge. And good to see you. And a big thank you for inviting us to your event last week. And I have to admit, man, how far you guys have come from the early days. Staying at the Rio is what you indicated in your little speech last week.
Anyway, in fairness, everyone stayed at the Rio. It wasn't just, just the Attached folks that we stayed.
What we do need to get next year, which the consensus was, since the venue's the Las Vegas Country Club, we got to get a golf tournament that is associated with the event.
We can get it done. I'll tell you, because they always offer. I call them up because we rent out the club like the whole day.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, whatever you want to do. If you guys want to play golf or whatever,
I was picking you up on that,
good.
100%.
So we should definitely get that done.
That's if MJ Biz takes place in Vegas. I heard the days in Vegas are numbered, and Long Beach, California could be next year. That's what I heard.
That's interesting. I said so. There were a lot of folks who said to us this year that if we didn't have the event, they come in just for the event, the Attached event.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we haven't even seen. So it's kind of though, you want to see people go to MJ Biz Daily. You don't want to show up to MJ Biz Daily and, not have folks there. But I agree. I think the conference was manageable. I was on the floor, and it actually felt like it was much more manageable. And if you wanted to see folks, it was much easier to kind of see it in a smaller setting. It had gotten really, really big.
So to give it context, for those that don't know or those that haven't been, when we say that the exhibit hall floor was much smaller than past years, it was much smaller than past years. But for the last 10 years, we've walked around that thing saying there's way too many lighting companies. How many extraction companies can you possibly have in these booths? There was just a plethora of just duplicative businesses that we've all said to each other for years now, when is this going to kind of cycle out? So it finally happened. To give it a little bit of context, it's not like there was just dustbins or dust balls just rolling around.
It's not nice. Yeah. You wear these tanning salon glasses and just walk through some of the aisles there, because there was a lot of.
You've noticed in years past there was 30 lighting guys.
There's a lot of lighting.
Packaging. There was 4 dozen packaging companies.
You get a tan walking down some of those aisles. But anyways, we're going to say, Michael.
That's right. I mean, that's the way it felt. I mean, it just felt like, okay, miles and miles and miles. But I thought it was fine. I mean, look, it is a general state of where the industry is too, which I think folks were a little concerned about, where it's okay, we all know that the industry is, is not kind of exactly where it should be right now. Yeah. Certainly maybe not what we envisioned 10 years ago on it, but I had a good time. I enjoyed going to the show. I thought the people were quality. That I ran into. So I don't really have any complaints, and I'll be back, I will be back next year.
Yeah, us too. And we always say this probably every single year. And we just hope that the next year will imply some sort of reform. But did you hear anything? Do you think we're heading in the right direction? Conversations I had, it all signs point to that way. I know a lot of people are really pessimistic about it all right now, and doubting, whether or not there's going to be any kind of information pertaining to that. I don't know what the timeline is, but people I spoke to just still believe that something is going to happen, and you only hope at this case, and we shall wait and see. But did you hear anything?
So I think it's important to point out that the worst way to find out what's going on is to ask other people in industry what they think is going on. Yeah. Because there's this echo chamber that goes on around, I think, what people talk to each other about. So generally when I'm giving information or I'm taking information, right? I'm actually all right, this is what I'm finding out in DC. This is what's going on. I mean, I did a panel and people were coming up to me afterwards and I was like, no, that's not going on. When was the last time you actually have been to Congress? Or what were you what are you doing? This, that, or the other thing. I mean, I do believe that stuff is going to happen, and there's a sentiment there because in the conversations that we're actually having in DC,
Yeah.
the rescheduling conversation is real. Yeah, it is. It's just real. And I think, like, people have been beaten up for so long sometimes on information that they get, that when kind of the thing that is good information, that it's harder to listen to. There've been a lot of people sort of crying wolf on stuff for a while. But, like, I don't know. I mean, when I came on and I talked about what was going to happen vis-a-vis the hemp language, like, I've been saying the same thing for a while, and when it was going to happen, how it was going to happen, right? But folks were not necessarily, like, listening to that, because there's this echo chamber between, like, sort of the industry publications and all this other stuff that's going on that, like, doesn't really bear reality.
Yeah.
And I think that this right now, like what I'm here trying to do also is separate out the fact from the fiction.
You know what it is? No one believes anything until it happens. And that's just the reality of the space that we're in right now, because no one believed a hemp ban was going to take place. Now it's in place. And it's the same thing with rescheduling. We could give it a definitive answer and date and time, and we feel like we're at, like, when it's going to happen. We don't know that. And when it does, no one's really going to understand or know. But when it does happen, that's when people are going to finally believe. But why? How could you not look at it that way, considering the history of the industry? And Anthony, you go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I also think, like, you look at what's going on, even what's going on in Congress around the hemp language. I mean, they passed language that has allowable THC limit in products. There's no other Schedule I substance that does that, right? So, like, when you look at it in the long term, that was really a good first step.
Yeah.
Okay, to actually making the argument at the federal level that Congress has moved. Okay, and we already have from the last administration a report that says it shouldn't be Schedule I, and in fact it should be Schedule III. So we're moving in the exact right direction.
Yeah.
I just think that it's the political timeline that people don't know. That's a good question. Who moves first? I think that the administration moves first this time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
That's what I think.
Lance, the best was Shad riding around interviewing CEOs. I think it was Vegas. Yeah, I've done that in Vegas. I've done that in Miami. Maybe I should go old school and rent the Escalade again and cruise down the strip. And next year, maybe that's something that we do. But I'd rather be golfing. Actually, maybe we should set up our podcast like on the 14th tee off, something like that, and do a show all day. But I know I probably would do that, but I know Anthony would not, because he'd want to play around at golf. But maybe that's something that could be arranged next year, Mr. Bronstein.
It takes a lot of planning. I think that's a lot of logistics that you just talked about there. So I will pass to my folks fair
enough.
The suggestion.
Attaches people that do that, not named Michael.
Yeah,
exactly.
If they're watching, I'm sorry.
Good point. All right, let's jump into our first big story. The Congressional Research Service, the CRS, which is Congress's non-bipartisan research arm, is now saying it's unclear how the federal government is even going to enforce this new hemp THC ban. So the FDA doesn't have the manpower, the DEA doesn't have the manpower, and overnight, half the hemp industry is in a gray zone, which we all know. So from your sitting point, what's this feel like? Because when we look at it, it looks like policy Washington pushed through without actually thinking this all the way through. So a lot of moving parts here. How should we look at this?
I think there could be resources coming on the way in terms of, because this was just sort of a first step. So they're like, well, how do we, when CRS is evaluating things, they're looking at what it is that Congress may act on in the future as well, or what may or may not have been in that legislation. So I do think that you could see some of that. The other thing that they talked about in the CRS report is what they didn't know exactly when they talk about enforcement.
Yep.
They didn't know if basically enforcement looked the way it does in the marijuana space, where it's like, okay, at the state level, you have X program. So call it, an adult use program. Maybe there's an adult use hemp program, right? What does this look like in Kentucky? What does this look like in Tennessee? What does this look like in North Carolina, Georgia, right? What does it look like in some of those states where, they don't have adult use programs on the books, but here they have some of the hemp programs? What's going to happen? What's going to happen in those cases? I think largely that they're asking those questions from an enforcement perspective. They're not being like, oh, they passed a law that's like totally unenforceable, right?
Yeah.
I think that folks in the industry are like, oh yeah, look at the CRS report. But if you actually read the CRS report and not the marijuana moment headline, as opposed to just the headline, like
Correct.
actually look at the CRS report, I think the CRS report outlines what some of the issues are that they expect to resolve. Interestingly, over the last couple of weeks, since this, what we've seen is attorneys general have really started stepping up at the state level.
Yeah, I've seen
that. In terms of enforcement. We've seen state legislatures also come in and craft some of the law around meeting the federal definition. So I think this is going to be ongoing, but I didn't read the report as like the federal government throwing its hands up in the air or something.
Okay.
No,
All right.
You want to talk about enforcement. I mean, there's a lot of things right now there's a lot of large institutions that facilitate the hemp industry. Visa, MasterCard, Shopify, the US Mail, UPS. Like those are like, if it gets to the 300 and whatever day we're at right now, and that federal ban goes into effect, those rails are going to cease to exist, like without much enforcement. They're just going to deem it a non-transactable business. They're going to get kneecapped to a certain degree without enforcement even happening at, let's say, like the store level or like at the state level. Those kind of things are going to be shut off quickly.
I'm going to steal the CRS line, the can't remember stuff line from the chat. That's a very good. That's a good acronym.
Yeah.
I would also say that, look, on this type of thing, that's actually already happening. So the countdown is not 365 days from an enactment. All right. And it's especially not for banks or some of the credit card processing, because they don't want to go into the end of that period and have these accounts on the books.
Correct.
They look to clean up the accounts before that period, not after that period. So one of the things that we did here in Vegas, right, which I believe is kind of, happening, is that folks were saying, okay, they've heard of stories where they're not able to, that they got thrown out of their bank, or there isn't like, credit card processing on it, right? Like more akin to what you would hear on the marijuana industry side of the equation that's happened over the years. So I think the risk profile and the risk assessment, banks aren't going to sit around and wait for Congress to, create regulation or change something or whatever. They're looking at it as a, Congress just voted, and they voted by a large margin. But then, by the way, they're not even taking into account that it was a large margin. Like if it was like a very small margin, they probably would still be doing what it is that they're doing, because it's still federal law.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You brought up attorneys general and the type of support that they're getting. I did a story a while back, but there was as many as 32 attorneys general were looking for movement in Washington pertaining to safe banking. Does that have, and I know it's kind of an older story, but does that have what kind of influence does that have on Congress, if any at all? I would assume it does to a certain point.
It had influence. So attorney general letters really do have influence on Congress. And I think that the attorney general this time around letter had a real influence on Congress as to when they had to move, because you had 39 AGs saying you got to do something about this, right? Hugely bipartisan. That's what it was that that's what it was that they sought. In terms of banking, so the AGs sent their letter previously prior to the banking committee markup, which is about as far as it went. But I do think that when the AGs highlighted it, it really did matter. It did matter in getting Republicans on board with it. But ultimately the law didn't pass. But I do think that when people see AG letters aimed at Congress, and they have so many AGs on them, I just know from talking to members of Congress, it matters. And also when their AG signs it, a lot of the people who are in the states where the AG signed it, like that's a cue for them about what it is they should be supporting. So if they were in a more conservative state, they're like, okay, I don't like marijuana, but I can support marijuana banking. My AG certainly doesn't like marijuana, but we sure as heck don't like having cash on the streets and having robberies. So I do think it's influential.
So you would say like an attorney general and a senator and the relationships that they have within those states, if they're getting information, let's say the senator in Washington from an attorney general representing that specific state, it definitely grabs their attention. Yes.
I think it's certainly helpful. I mean, not always do they vote the same way, right? Like, for example, Keith Ellison from Minnesota signed on to the AG letter, and the two senators voted against it. It's actually interesting. If you watch the vote, the Minnesota votes were actually on the other side, and then they switched over before the end of the vote, right? And I think that Minnesota has gone back and forth about how it is that they see it. So it doesn't always work out that way, but it does mostly work out that way.
Okay. So do you think Congress will be forced to revisit the definition of all this? Or like you said, it's just a headline story. And once you actually read the actual report itself, it pretty much explains what this is all about.
They're guaranteed to revisit it, because the reason why they're guaranteed to revisit it is because someday they're going to have to legalize marijuana at the federal level. And so the definition that happens, or that definition that happens around that, is going to be it. Like, everybody's going to know the next time they do something, they're legalizing marijuana. I don't think that anybody is in the dark about what it is that's going on. They didn't like synthetics. They didn't like the idea that hemp, that there were products in the market that people were saying, okay, these are hemp products, quote unquote, nod, nod, wink, wink. Okay. And they were being sold all over the country under the auspices of a farm bill that nobody, that nobody really read intoxicating products into. I don't think that became uncontroversial. That was controversial in industry. Do you know where it wasn't controversial? Congress, right? It was actually in both. It was actually in first, the House Farm Bill. It was in the Senate Farm Bill. So I think that what you would see next in the next move is you would see some level of regulation. But I think that the read that this wasn't popular is wrong. I mean, if you look at the vote, like very few votes in Congress do you get like 70 plus members voting for on the Senate side.
Brian Dabrowski writes, already reading it, quote, it remains unclear if and how federal law enforcement will enforce the new prohibitions when the new definition goes into effect, end quote.
Of course it's unclear. It happened 10 days ago. I
think marijuana enforcement's unclear too. Remember, we've had guidance rescinded, right? So even if you were just so let's pretend you were just passed a law and you said, okay, now everything is marijuana, right? It's like not that clear given what the enforcement mechanisms are at the federal level as to what it is that would happen. The way that I think the most likely thing that happens is it gets treated the way that the intoxicating portions of it, or what is not defined under the law, gets treated the way that the current cannabis industry at the state level is treated until there's a change in federal law, which I think, quite frankly, this makes it more likely, not less likely.
Yeah, I agree.
And with Brian's optimism, it would kind of lead you to believe that just because people are saying, well, the feds don't truly have a plan on enforcement, they think that they can just put their heads in the sand and just go on their way as they were before the ban happened. And I don't think that's going to be feasible and or reality.
Not when you see the crackdowns taking place.
No, but I think state laws are going to change too. That's what we're seeing. I mean, it'll be interesting to watch and see what happens. Like, we talked about Florida a lot over the last, several years. What happens in Florida, right? Like, they had what was a very good, and some may dispute this, but I would say that they had a very good hemp bill in Florida, where you could have natural THC. You could have, a lot of different things that were would have made a good market, and that was vetoed. So like, where are they? Where is the market at now?
By the way,
it would have been much safer.
Speaking of Florida, there was a bill. There was a bill introduced today by a Florida congressman for homegrow, 6 plants per person, and you can buy seeds and clones from MMTCs. If that goes through, it'd be very interesting to see if that bill gets traction and happens to get passed before the election in 2026, ahead of adult use, because that will completely negate any sort of blowback that amendment's going to get, that it doesn't include home grow, for those that can't seem to comprehend a single use ballot initiative not being able to have home grow in it to get on the ballot. So, I mean, that was that's a positive data point for Florida.
Okay.
It was reported by Marijuana Moment. It'd be good to see where that goes in the coming months.
Where do you see home grow going if it does get included?
Great. Like, what do you mean? I just said where it's going to go. 6 plants per person.
I realize that, but I mean like year 2, 3 years into it, because as I said before, in different markets, Canada, for example, home grow was an important thing. Now it's just something people have completely forgotten.
I think home grow should be a right in any state that has adult use or medical cannabis.
Yeah.
It should be highly regulated, and it should be mandated by the governing body in that state. But if cannabis is legal to a certain extent for an adult use or medical use perspective, you should be able to grow it within certain rules and regulations. As soon as that bill passed, I'm growing 6 plants at my house. I'm not going to grow 6 plants in my house because I don't want to buy cannabis from the regulated MMTCs. I'm going to grow cannabis just because I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
To do it.
I think from a policy perspective, like you have it permissible under state law and have it have it licensed, right? Like if you have you like a permit to carry a gun, you have a permit to do like all these different things, right?
Right.
Like why not? Like I don't understand, because then here's the thing: who's permitted to do it or not, right? So I think that's been a shortcoming, kind of how people are thinking about it. From a regulatory perspective.
Yeah.
Because you can actually, the thing that most people are scared of in states, and they shouldn't be, but early on, there were issues. There were certainly issues in Colorado. There were issues around it. But the reality is like, if we're going to regulate like alcohol, you have people who are doing home brewing, you have that type of thing. Like, there's really no reason there's really no reason to get in the way of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to grow plants at home, but I'm not going to grow it as good as like the Flowery's growing in their indoor facility.
Right.
That's being professionally grown. Like I'm doing it out of curiosity. And sure, if the flower is good and I can keep it, it'll go to use. But I'm not going to sit here and just use it as a complete substitution for buying from the legal market. Granted, there'll be some that do, but it's not going to be enough to where it impacts the market. That's why I've always been a pretty staunch proponent of like the MSOs and the corporate cannabis companies. They don't really care about home grow.
No, that's right.
It's not eating into their business at scale.
Yeah. Andrew,
I think it used to be. I mean, look, I think early on there were some fights about it. Like we're talking years and years ago. Yeah. I don't think there's anybody right now who's like, you shouldn't, right? No. The people you have to convince are the politicians. I don't think you have to convince the people who are in the,
Agreed. Being allowed to grow 6 plants and having the space too are two different things, right? It's Andrew Follender, and that's a very good point. But to your point, I think everybody just wants to have the ability to have choices.
It's having the right to do it. I mean, people just don't like not having the right to do it, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
If I can smoke it, if I can buy it, if I can possess it, I might as well be able to grow it in that same state.
Yeah, and I will say in our market as well, that's definitely something that people wanted. But now that we're 7-8 years in, I can tell you like home grow is just something that people just said, okay, enough. I can just go to the dispensary around the corner and get what I want. But to your point, having that right is two different things than being not allowed to grow it. So I get it.
Yeah.
Let's now move to our next story. DOJ memo just surfaced showing prosecutors were told to be extremely cautious with gun cases involving cannabis users because the federal gun ban might not survive in court. And this is happening right as the Supreme Court takes up the issue. So this could be a big turning point. So, Mike, I'll begin with you. How big, I guess, is that DOJ internally acknowledging the marijuana gun ban could collapse under the legal challenge? Like, what should people be paying attention to here?
I always thought this was ripe. And I've thought so for a number of years. And not, it's just because of also what I've been told along the way. And it also just doesn't seem to go along with how people, and certainly how the Supreme Court reads the Second Amendment. So I think that it could be a pretty seminal case. I mean, if this gets If people like, and it also another sort of break in the armor on this, but like, how do you take, and this is said a lot. You have people who are veterans who are concerned about using cannabis, either an adult use state or even medical. I mean, I was out with the veterans group, and one gentleman was telling me I was really concerned because he would lose his right, his right to bear arms, and it's just very hard to say no to that. And if you're talking on a states' rights issue, so I think that there could be, they could be very narrow, or they could read some more stuff into it. And I just think that this Supreme Court has not been the narrow type when they read certain things that they agree with. I think it's going to be pretty. I think it'll be pretty interesting. I think it'll be a pretty exciting case to watch.
Does this look and feel like Washington could be prepping for a big shift?
If you had people who are in the administration, okay, there are a couple things that are going on with this. You had the Biden administration basically saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, this is going to be very hard. If we go to court and it does make its way to the Supreme Court, this is going to be very hard to defend.
Yeah.
You have a Trump administration who actually, interestingly, wants to uphold, wants to uphold, right? But the reality is that people saw enough, and you have a lot of conservative organizations that are, gun right organizations, things like that are filing briefs on this. So it's created a really interesting mix.
The NRA
in front of the court. Yeah, the NRA.
The NRA is backing this.
Yeah. So I think it's like very hard. Like, this is exactly the type of thing that the Supreme Court, from a political standpoint, would take up, and potentially, I think it could open up questions about other things federally, right? It could open up questions about the constitutionality of, of certain provisions at the state level. It could open up, because if people see that right and the ability to have that right, who's to say that that shouldn't be extended over time,
correct,
to other rights.
So if the Supreme Court were to overturn this ban, like, would this be something that would take an effect immediately, or similar to like a hemp ban where it'd be like a slow rollout over time and they would walk before they run?
No, I think that once the ruling is it depends on what they do, but once the ruling is handed down, it's interpretation of the law of the land.
Yeah.
The law is fundamentally changed.
Yeah. How realistic is this, do you think?
I think it gets overturned.
Wow.
I think it's realistic.
Yeah. I think it's going to get deemed unconstitutional.
That's huge. That's big.
Well, if it goes through. They have the ability not to listen or not to hear the case. So that's still to be determined.
So if they do, like, what do you think this does for the industry? Because this is really going to put a lot of attention on the roadmap, in addition to everything else that's going on.
It's another thing.
It's another notch.
It's another notch. And
remember, it's another notch on the belt, and it's not anything crazy, but it's righting one wrong that's highly contradictory right now, that everyone from conservatives to, the Biden administration, even we're finding out, said, well, guys, this might not hold up in a court of law. It's just one step in the right direction, but it's not going to be anything earth shattering or industry shaking. But it'll be good. It'll be one thing that we finally got right.
Well, I'd be curious to see if it applies any pressure, where I'm going with this on rescheduling. And I know those are two separate topics, but again, we keep the conversation going. You start to things that look differently. Does this add any kind of pressure whatsoever on the DEA's ruling of rescheduling, if that is indeed get announced?
I think that what it does is it just continues to add up the movement, right? We have a number of things that are ripe federally, where from a long time before we haven't. Okay, we have a Supreme Court case potentially being heard on state level legalization. We have one on gun rights. Okay, so I think that like all of these things are now hitting the precipice
Yes.
of where they need to be, are docketed where they need to be to actually have change. Okay, we have congressional pressure. We have stuff working its way through the administration. We have the Supreme Court. So all of these things, like, there's no way to look at this. So before, the industry was kind of like look at where we were working. We were working on a state by state basis. Okay, and there was nothing that was going on, from a federal perspective, because it hadn't really hit that tipping point. Okay, and people didn't care. There's a case in U.S. tax court right now on 280E. Okay, so these issues are now percolating all the way to the top of where decisions are being made. And look, when you take a number of shots on goal, some of them are going to get through.
Yeah.
At this level.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've been taking shots on goal for a while, but now they're actually, now they're actually up in the right spot. So I just think, I think that that's good from I think a short-term and a long-term perspective in the industry.
Agreed. All right. Last thing I want to bring up, and it's a state which is a very conservative state, and that is the great state of Kentucky, where the governor says the state's first medical cannabis dispensary could open within the next couple of weeks. 24,000 patients right now are already certified, and the state is openly positioning cannabis as an opioid alternative, which is big. I bring this up because, yes, it's good to have this first dispensary opening up the next couple of weeks, but do you think this opens up the door and has an influence on other conservative states? Because it's a monumental moment, given the tradition and the history of this state and where it sits, and how fast or how far times have changed for the bluegrass state.
I mean, Kentucky's also a big hemp state. I would be curious to see how that patient number starts to trend, which I would assume in the left to right direction as we get further into 2026.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's a success. I mean, it's a market that's been a long time coming. It's a big hemp market. And hopefully it's a successful medical and eventually converts into an adult use market. Because that Rust Belt area needs to start to turn on. It's been one of the ones that have lagged behind for some time now.
What is the population of Kentucky? Do we know?
8 million, 9 million, and that's just me throwing a dart.
Is it really that much?
I don't think that's all.
I'm looking online right now and just thinking 4.52 million people.
Oh, okay.
And there's 24,000 medical patients already registered or certified, as I said. So, I don't know what the total addressable market is, but like I said, Michael, like this is a telling sign, and you wonder if this is a sign of things to come for more conservative states. Because if this gets it right, and I assume it will, why wouldn't it obviously have an effect and carry on through to other states across the U.S.?
Kentucky is going to be fascinating going forward, because you're right. You sort of have this adult use hemp program. You have a medical cannabis program. We spent a lot of time talking about, well, is Minnesota the microcosm of what's going on? I actually think it's like watching Kentucky over this next year is gonna know. It's like a real interesting place, because you've got Mitch McConnell there.
Yeah.
Right? You've got Rand Paul. Right? Like, it is like the center of the universe from a policy debate standpoint.
100%.
And I think I hate to say this, but I think Andy Beshear is pragmatic enough to where he would bring the hemp industry into the cannabis industry to start to legitimize operators that are there and actually just do a congruent regulatory framework across THC. If he did have the, let's say, gumption and or wanted to go there, I think he could get it done. Unlike what they had the opportunity to do in Texas, which, granted, Texas are getting it right with the expansion of Teacup, but the hemp industry is just going to, God knows what it's going to do.
Yeah.
Once we get closer to that ban.
People are really split. And I think that Kentucky is symbolic in this fight in a lot of different ways. And it's just incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
You've got Rand Paul. I mean, Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell are like polar opposites on the
Very
issue,
much so.
and they're from the same state. Okay. There weren't that
Same
many
state, probably the top two most well-known senators across the country, all involved in perhaps one of the biggest stories that we've seen in cannabis and hemp this year alone. So yeah, you bring up some valid points.
Yeah. So, and also now there's going to be ground game, right? Like, how does the medical program interact with the hemp program?
Yeah.
Okay. And then also what's interesting is in Kentucky is they started out one place with their hemp program. They moved it a little bit to another place. Like they continuously are adding rules to the program. You know, some of the stuff that we've talked about nationally, we've seen play out on the ground in Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
The synthetics discussion played out in Kentucky. Okay. And all of these sort of lines, you know, are being drawn. And it's interesting because Kentucky kind of, because it doesn't have an adult use program, right? And they're just coming into medical, it's arguably more interesting, like a, you know, possibly a real medical program on there. It's going to be very interesting to see how all of that plays out. And it might just be that it's Kentucky that we're looking at when we look back and we're like, actually, that was more reflective of what the national mood was than, say, a state like Minnesota. Like Minnesota right now, I feel like everyone's running around and like, you know, the brewers and beverage and all of that. It certainly was the proving ground, you know, for that discussion. Yeah. But I think it's the proving ground for very little else relative to what happened.
You wonder if this will be a tipping point for the state of Indiana. We've had a lot of people reach out to us from that state asking if things will change. And let's face it, anything's possible. Heck, the Indiana Hoosiers are now the #1 ranked team in college football. So anything's possible.
But Indiana last session had an adult use hemp program. And I didn't really think I'd be going toe to toe with you on what was going on in Indiana, but I'll tell you what was going on in Indiana.
What's going on in Indiana?
They had basically what was an adult use hemp program that allowed for synthetics, but it also would have permitted THCA flower to be shipped out of state under the law. That got shelved. So there was nothing that, you know, there wasn't really anything that happened on that. And now they're coming back and they're taking a look at what happened. I think that they'll look at what happened federally and sort of making determinations about what it is that they're going to do in state. So again, it's another interesting.
So Michael,
interesting proving ground to watch.
What is because we've talked about this all the time, 50 different states operating like 50 different countries. When you look at a state like Indiana, a state like Tennessee, what is it that like they seem to be falling so far behind on this topic, like this issue? Is it just personal views of members that are in place right now? Is that what it is?
The question is, are they behind or are they ahead? Like that's the thing. Is it a lagging indicator or are they out in front? I think in the case of Tennessee, you know, there was a lot that was going on in Tennessee with less rules, less regulation. Look at it like regular businesses too. You know what I mean? Like people aren't opening up textile factories, you know, in the northern tier of the United States. They're opening them up in, you know, the South, okay, because there are different laws that are going on in the South than there are in other places. Like there's more manufacturing presence in certain areas because of it, and you sort of get regional variations off of how the economy works. I don't think that cannabis is going to be, you know, in the long term, terribly different potentially, depending on how this thing gets regulated at the federal level. But because we've legalized on a state-by-state basis, the only real thing that makes sense is having some level of federal overlay with what state laws are. Look at liquor. I mean, you have standard labeling, you have a minimum federal standard, okay, but states have different laws that are on the books with what it is that they do. I think that that's probably the most logical thing to happen for cannabis, the way that cannabis is in 2025.
Yeah. All right. All eyes on Kentucky these next couple of weeks, but that's a telling sign and a positive step in the right direction. But like I said, you wonder if this will be a tipping point for other states to, they will. You know, you look at Virginia and the election that they just had and some of the neighboring states that took place, the stuff that's going on in PA right now that you and I and Anthony have discussed for a number of months. Anytime a state opens up its door and goes live, that's obviously going to have effect not only for states that are far away, but especially next door. And anyway,
there's two ways to tell if federal legalization happened. One is if the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act is amended,
Yeah.
right? And the other is if you can buy marijuana legally in Idaho. If any of those two things happened, we probably broke prohibition.
Yeah.
Well said.
Sure.
Listen, appreciate you inviting us again to the event last week. And as usual, have a great week. We'll see you back here next Monday. Okay, sir?
It was great to see you guys.
All right. Thanks,
Mike.
Michael. Yeah. Man has put in the time and effort, has he not? Considering where that a company, an agency started, I think it was 11 years ago to where it is now. But I don't think people truly understand what he does on the state level. And there's a lot of people that appreciate the work that Michael and his agency do and the questions that they have to field every single day pertaining to both the cannabis and hemp industry. Easier said than done. But if we want more states to come on live and we want to know the latest news, this is why we bring on Michael every single Monday to figure out what is he hearing and what happens next. Because yes, we want federal rescheduling to take place. But once that happens, we need more states to come online. And that's the insight that he provides. And he has provided that along with Trent pertaining to Virginia. And hopefully we see more stuff happen in PA in the coming months. And I think we will. So last story I want to bring up, Trulieve, they officially redeemed all of its $368 million of its 8% secured senior secured notes that are due in 2026, meaning that entire debt pile is now gone, Anthony. This is telling and a very good sign for obviously the company and for its shareholders.
Yeah, it's a great sign. I mean, it's a huge chunk of debt off the balance sheet. It's still to be determined where the cash is coming from.
Yep.
If you do the math with the cash out on the balance sheet, plus what they're going to be spending in 2026 on Smart and Safe, plus just general cash reserves. Granted, Trulieve is generating cash on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
That's being accrued on the balance sheet. So, it's going to be telling. I'm assuming there's going to be a bank deal in the next couple of weeks or some sort of facility to shore up the cash and or liquidity with the business. But this is great. Well into the 9-figure tranche of debt that's now been retired on the balance sheet.
Yeah, David Benz, they didn't roll it over. This is now gone. And
gone.
Yeah. So makes you wonder, I guess, if mergers and acquisitions are at the forefront for this space in the next 6 months, all signs could point in that direction as well for Trulieve. But clean financial runway for the company and a moment of truth time for the space. But they are lined up and ready to roll and become even bigger. But this is what we've said since day one. The industry is going to become smaller, and those that are prepared for the opportunity will only enhance and get bigger and bigger. And that is where Trulieve sits right now.
You know about a pending Trulieve acquisition that I don't?
What?
You sounded pretty bullish on M&A with Trulieve.
I didn't say any M&As, but you often wonder if that could be the case, considering that, we've talked about that in previous shows. But I appreciate the question being thrown back at me. But kind of like my January 1 guarantee, it's not a guarantee, and I'm just drumming up conversation, which I think you know. David Burke writes, where is Don Murphy? I think Don's just enjoying life right now.
He's sailing, riding bikes. He's enjoying life.
Yeah. So I think Mr. Murphy is just enjoying life, but not to sit here and say we'll never have him back on. And yes, we have reached out to him a number of times, but he's basically enjoying life. Nothing to talk about until we see some sort of dialogue and movement out of Washington. And who can blame him, man? He has put in a lot of time and effort over the years. Don't know how old he is, but that man's got a lot of gas still left in his engine. And why not spend it on time with the family? So yeah, we've reached out to him, but that's kind of where he is at life right now. And I'm not going to argue because he deserves it.
Yep.
All right. What do we got for this week? You're going to go solo this Friday. I'm going to be away, but Wednesday, what's that? I know. I just told you now.
That's news to me.
A week from Wednesday, we're going to have Paulo DeLuca, CFO from Organigram, on to talk about their latest earnings. We did have an interview lined up this week with Raj from High Tide to talk about the news out of Berlin last week. He's still over in Germany, so we got to push that back. We'll keep you all updated on when we can reschedule with Raj. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to be doing the next TDR Membership Plus podcast with Frank Colombo, along with Steve Ernest and Seth Yakutin. So if you get a chance, and if you are a TDR membership, member, I should say, TDR Plus member, make sure to log on tomorrow afternoon. We'll have our latest video that talks about everything and anything that you should be watching heading into 2026 pertaining to the space, plus a quick recap of what they saw and heard last week in Vegas as well. So that's going to be posted tomorrow. I think that's it for now, my friend. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. We'll keep everybody up to date on Wednesday's show and who we'll have on. And I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about and discuss. But I think that's it for now.
Yeah, that is this John guy in the comments just seems really angry.
All you guys should never bought those dispensaries.
Like
and then
fourth paragraph long comment of just, see, look, dude's angry.
He's bang. John, I don't think I've heard you before here in the podcast, but listen, everybody has their own opinion. Yes, this is John Bonacci. I was just tooting my own horn. Sorry, John. It's all good, buddy.
Yeah, it's all good.
S3 coming up, writes AMGR83. Yes, I think somebody asked me as well. January 2nd, 2026. Yeah, right. I wish I knew, everybody. And if it was, I'd tell you, but I don't know.
Oh, if there's any Notre Dame fans out there, you guys are a bunch of sore losers.
Man, that was bad. They have skipped a bowl game. Skipped a bowl game.
Yeah. Canes got in, though, and they deserved it.
Well, Nick Saban came out afterwards and says, I hope college football fixes this. And I'm just like, well, didn't they just fix from 4 teams to 12 teams? And now they have another issue, another problem. Like, I don't know how they fix this because
but they put James Madison and Tulane in that are going to get the shit beat out of them.
Yeah.
That should have been Notre Dame, Texas, or Vanderbilt.
Good point.
Yeah, those teams are going to get destroyed. Those are going to be 40-point wins.
There needs to be I don't know, college football. It's just like, give me the top ranked 25 or 30 teams and they just play each other. And then you structure a playoff after that.
But then there's too many games. A 30-team tournament with football.
Maybe you start sooner, the playoffs. But one thing's for sure, college basketball has the best playoff tournament in all of sports with 64 teams. But you can turn around after 48 hours and play, which
no problem.
Football.
I am happy though that the England game is going to be in Jerry World for the World Cup in June.
We'll say this. Oh, is it?
England's playing Croatia in Jerry World.
When does that start again? The World Cup?
June of next year.
And what are the cities? There is
it's everywhere. It's from Mexico City to Vancouver to Toronto.
Yeah, I know that.
The US.
What are the U.S. cities? You got Miami, Dallas,
Miami,
LA?
Dallas, LA, Chicago, and New York.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
so I get to go see England and play in Jerry World.
Man, that's going to be hot playing in the summertime Miami.
Dude, the game, it's like we got like Saudi Arabia and Ecuador.
True.
I've got no interest in going to see that.
Yeah. And I think they might be used to that kind of weather.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We'll see you back here Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And make sure to scan that QR code, become a Daily Baked In newsletter subscriber. Gives you all the latest news on the business and reform side of the cannabis industry and delivered to your inbox weekdays, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern time. In the meantime, AV, enjoy your day. Thanks again, everybody. And we'll see you back here at 4 o'clock on Wednesday. Take care. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching here today. Listen, if you're getting value from us here at TDR, make sure to check us out at TDR Plus. It's our exclusive membership community. Why? Well, you'll see CEO interviews that go beyond business, showing a personal side that you won't find anywhere else, including the biggest names in the industry. Plus, you'll get insights from analysts and day traders on where the industry's headed, both short-term and long-term, and a direct chat group with our team. It's only $7 a month, just 25 cents a day, and it helps support everything we do here at TDR. If you want to join, just click the join button below and become a TDR Plus member today. And once again, a big thank you for being part of our community. So that's it for today. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.